Hi, I'm Bob Berge. Welcome to Eight Wheels Across America. With me today is Barry Howell of Minnesota Coaches. Barry is located in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I'm in the small community of Wilmelsdorf, Pennsylvania. If you followed my podcasts in the past, you know that Barry has shared with us before, but this is a first for both of us to be doing this on video. We're glad you've joined us as we talk about the new 2024 Prevost H3-45 Motorcoach that has just debuted this past week at the United Motorcoach Expo in Orlando, Florida. Barry, glad to have you here, and thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us.
Sounds great, Bob. This will be a lot of fun, no doubt. My name is Barry Howell. I live in the Twin Cities, Minnesota, which right now is very cold and snowy. I work for Minnesota Coaches. We are a very large operator operating actually out of 5 locations, 4 here in Minnesota and 1 in Wisconsin. We run a fleet of between 90 and 100 coaches currently, and a whole bunch of school buses, probably getting close to 900 school buses at this point. So it's a pretty big operation across multiple companies and locations within that. My particular role, I work in the management group with our Twin Cities operation, which is comprised, it's kind of our base of operation here in the Twin Cities in Minnesota. So I do our safety meetings, training, can oversee some of that training, help with some of that. But primarily my role is just, I'm a bit of a Swiss Army knife. I do a little bit of driving. I'll be down with an NBA team here this afternoon that's in town in a little while. I do a lot of just trying to help with our customer experience in general, helping our drivers feel like they know what they're doing, and get involved as needed in individual contracts and presentations along the way. Uh, it's been interesting because I came into this as somebody 10 years ago that drove a morning school bus route that ended up into being trained into the motor coach side, into a management job that I never saw coming. Like Bob, I had a lot of interest and experience in photography, did that professionally for many years prior to getting into this crazy world, and now here I am. Motorcoach
That's
USA.
that's that's great. And we want to get to a little bit about the meat of the subject here today. You just returned from UMA, United Motorcoach
Correct.
Association's Expo in Orlando. Give us a little bit of an overview of what that was like.
Well, once we landed after a flight delay out of Minneapolis because of weather and the shutdown, the airline computer glitch of last a week ago Wednesday, I landed in Orlando, stepped off the plane, and wondered, why are we even going to go back? This seems like a pretty
Yeah.
good place to be right now. But it was really action-packed several days. There were 3 of us from our company. We were quite strategic on our plan for the few days that we would be there. We did a little divide and conquer amongst some of the training sessions. And for those of you that have never been to a UMA Expo, it is comprised of a trade show, which is a fairly minor part of the UMA experience. There are a couple of some large corporate gatherings with a breakfast and a luncheon and an awards dinner where there are speakers and different presentations, but there are educational breakout sessions that you can pick and choose your way through a little bit. It's like the high school or college days of electives. Do you want to go sit in on a group that's talking about technology or about safety or about this or that or whatever? Interestingly enough, the mechanics, there's a big emphasis with mechanics. They have their own little round table type group. There's a mechanics competition in addition to the drivers competition that is available to drivers that are involved as well. It's a really good thing. It's a great time to connect with not only peers from other companies around the country, but certainly vendors, and you get to spend time with people that otherwise you would never really interface with. So to meet,
Barry,
for example, to meet the lead engineer from Prevost, who over basically was in charge of the whole H3-45 rebrand of the last 7 years. That's a pretty neat experience to talk to somebody like that.
You briefly mentioned the driver competition. Can you tell us just a little bit more about that? Were there many drivers at the expo?
I don't know how many actually competed. I feel like there were maybe 20 or so. It could be 15 to 20 that competed. And it is a skills competition, very similar to the school bus rodeos that's a pretty common thing in the school bus world. It's a skills course that they set up offsite somewhere. Prevo is the sponsor of that. Um, I am working with some folks right now to try and maybe bring a little more emphasis to that event and maybe make that a little bit more exciting and a little neater in the future. I wish we knew more about it. It happens off sites. We don't get to see it. We don't get to watch it. I've only seen little video clips of some of that, but you can picture a big open parking lot somewhere with a lot of cones set up and a lot of skills of driving the motor coach. There were three. They award three levels: the first, second, and third place, and bring them up on stage and pictures. And it's nice to recognize drivers. So
Yeah, we posted photographs of the three winners on Eight Wheels Across America on on the Facebook group.
mhm.
By the way, if any of you are listening or watching this and not part of our Facebook group, Eight Wheels Across America, you really should check it out. Go to Facebook and search for Eight Wheels Across America, and you'll find us, and you can join very easily there. We have a really nice group of over 300 drivers right now talking about some of these issues on Facebook, where this video will be available in the future also.
Mhm.
One of the one of the winners was from Millard Coach, which is right near Elite, who I drive for. So it's nice to see a local representation. That caught me off guard. It looked like from some of the photos that I saw of the competition after the fact that one of the vehicles they got to drive for the competition was a 2024 Prevost. Did
Yep.
you notice that?
Yep, I did. In fact, the coach that I had the good fortune to take out for a test drive was delayed about an hour because it was out at the competition, and I was first in line to jump in and do a demo ride. So I patiently waited for the coach to arrive.
Did you get to drive it at all, or you just rode?
Oh, I got to drive it. It was
All
something
right.
that we were able to set up through our rep, and I was very excited about this opportunity. We had, I think, three or four representatives from Prevost that came along for the ride, which added a little bit of the nice to have a little intimidation factor there right out of the gate. But no, I wasn't too worried about it. I've driven plenty of high profile people, so it didn't bother me. But it was fun to take it out for a drive and just take what has been a beautiful motor coach. But before I even go into any of that, I mean, the reality is I had a laugh at the show because you heard this constant, Prevost, MCI, Van Hool, Tempsa, they're all great coaches. I mean, there is
Yeah.
not, they all are, they're great coaches. And unless any of us want to write a check personally, I think we should all be very thankful we drive what we drive because none of them are bad. And frankly, I think
Yeah,
the
I agree.
competition among vendors is fantastic. Much like in our camera world, Canon, Nikon, Sony, everybody pushes everybody. And I think it's just ultimately the end user benefits. So I am not a hater of every brand except for Prevost. I've been fortunate because that's been our primary motor coach. Could I jump in and drive an MCI or Van Hool? For sure. There's no
Yeah,
question about it.
I
However,
I
when it
agree.
comes to innovations, that's what's fun to see the different directions they go.
I think MCI and Prevost, especially those two brands, push each other a little bit. There's some back and forth as to new features as they're introduced. Wouldn't you
Yep.
agree?
Oh,
So,
absolutely. And I know there's been some discussion about, boy, the new H looks an awful lot like a J and they just copied them. Well, that's not entirely fair because, again, having spent some time informally for a pretty extended period of time with the engineer team that worked on it, they had a clay model of this over 5 years ago. This body style was already in play as a clay model long before the latest iteration of the J came out. So it, it's not really a copy. There's only so many things you can do to improve aerodynamics, which was a huge emphasis of this coach. They are claiming, Bob, an increase of 10 to 12% fuel efficiency with this H. Now, let's stop right there because they explained how they get there. For example, they are really pushing the e-mirrors. Now, that's not a standard, that is an upgrade option. The e-mirrors, when I saw them at UMA in Nashville, which is the last UMA I attended in 2020, just before the world stopped spinning, that e-mirror, the right-hand mirror, was mounted all the way over by the entrance door. And I remember thinking, that seems like a long way away. And even though it's closer than the outside mirror, technically, because you're looking at multiple views, I felt like that doesn't feel like a safe thing. Well, now they've moved it to the center pillar. And when I asked the engineer team about that, they indicated that when they originally wanted it on the center post, but originally in the previous design, they couldn't get the display to mount. It was vibrating too much for them. And so now that's one of the changes, is that new center column. So now that right mirror in the e-mirror, it's right there. I mean, it's center of the dash, right on that center column. So it's fabulous. However, if you go the e-mirror route, they are claiming a 4% increase in aerodynamic and fuel efficiency, directly to fuel
Wow.
efficiency.
Wow. That's
So when you
significant.
But think about it, when you're going down the road, if you roll the window down in your car and you stick your hand out, you can feel how much drag your hand has on that wind going down the road. So imagine those gigantic Motorcoach mirrors. So
Right.
that was a big part of it. Certainly just the aerodynamics of the change of the front, the additional slope, much like the J. There's a little, if you look at the photos of the new H, at the rear of the coach, there's a little channel that goes into a tiny little wing on the very back of the coach. And that's an additional little pickup of a percent or something of aerodynamic improvement, just to create a little
Really?
airflow. Yeah, the rear of the coach, if you look at the rear of a current H versus the new 2024, the rear is just a little bit different. It's designed, again, airflow to improve that. The new Volvo engine is supposedly an extra couple of percent increase for, with whatever design that they've done in that. So their stated 10 to 12% fuel efficiency increases kind of comes in bits and pieces depending on how you equip the coach a little bit, but it it's all heading in the right direction with the cost of fuel. It's never a bad thing.
I saw that redesign of the rear end with the redirected airflow. That it looks kind of sharp, actually. One of the easiest ways to differentiate the new coach from the older style from the back.
Right, right.
You posted a really nice overview of some of the changes that you saw. I have your post on screen here. Your summary of some of the changes. You want to go down through that list and talk about it just a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've touched on that. The headlights are kind of an interesting thing. They are brighter again, even brighter yet, and they are claiming they last 20 times longer. So 20 times longer. I mean, that might be the life of the coach for some people.
Yeah,
That's
right.
a crazy thing.
All
The
LED, right?
front end. Yep, all LED. Yep, the front of the coach has been redesigned. The two interesting things, I'm going to jump around a little while I'm thinking of it as I do my own little walk around with the coach in my head, I guess, is there is now a center panel right behind the chrome Prevost letters on the front. And then we can't settle the debate. Is it Prevost or Prevost? Everybody says something different, so whatever. It's one of those. But that whole center section now, it's just a door that opens straight forward for easy mechanic access to the wiper motors, defrosters. They don't need to take the dashboard apart anymore. That's one of those aha moments. Somebody had a
Right.
pretty good idea,
Why didn't
which
they
makes
do
a
that
lot of
long
sense.
ago, right? Why didn't
Yeah,
they do that long
exactly.
ago, right?
Exactly. The bumper, the front bumper is also now a three-piece bumper. So if somebody dings up the front corner of a coach, now there's just a section of bumper potentially that would have to be replaced versus the entire bumper being repaired or replaced. I thought that was interesting. The headlights are even more serviceable than they were before, and frankly, I've replaced a couple of lamps and it wasn't difficult. Well, they made it even easier. And then just around the front side of that coach, one of the real big changes that is affected both the outside and the inside, the service door under the driver window. When you open that now, you have immediate access to everything. They've done away with that hard plastic cover that was over the fuses that was pretty awkward to remove. And the driver window, the little teeny driver window, is no longer a little teeny driver window. It's quite large. When you open that service door, the driver window kind of opens with it, which was a little curious. If you were sitting in the coach and a mechanic opened that panel for some reason because you needed coolant or something and it was 10 below zero, it'd be a little chilly for a second because it's going to expose that driver area like it hasn't before. But whatever, that's neither here nor there. So there's kind of the key, I guess, on that. Probably look at what else I had put up there. I guess I've got all of that. The entryway, they say it's 7% wider, but it's a noticeable 7%. I've never found the entrance to an H or an MCI, I've never really found any of those entrances to be necessarily tight. It's not like a mini coach. They all seem pretty spacious. Well, 7% is a big deal, and you really feel it. That, along with a very slight curvature. It's not as curved as, I don't think it's as curved as the steps are in a J, but they have curved it a little bit, and they've just opened that up a little bit, and it feels very, very spacious. The whole front end of the coach feels more open, if that makes sense. The little driver compartment, when you walk up the steps of an H, to your immediate left up the steps, there's a little cubby hole that you can open up. We have fuel gloves and stuff like that in there. I find that's a great spot for me to throw my backpack or whatever. It's just real accessible and easy to get at. That compartment is now not as wide. It is narrower, but it is quite deep. I was able to put my arm all the way to my shoulder to reach into the back of it. So I don't know where it goes, but it's quite cavernous. It's amazing. So it's a little narrower, but I think it's quite a bit deeper. There's LED lighting is a big upgrade. It is currently on the H's. There are step lights that are mounted on like under the dash and on the side that illuminate across the steps. Now there's light bars that run underneath each step going up into the coach, and they are part of the whole LED system that now offers the 6 or 7 different colors that you can run with. Wondered if I'd ever see the day that Prevost would succumb to that pressure of the multicolored LED lighting options, but they apparently found enough customers that said they'd like it.
I think that option has proven more popular than a lot of people expected, especially sports teams. Sports teams and school groups like that color branding, and yep. The lights on the steps. That's a really nice touch, and
yep.
That's one step further than MCI has gone so far.
Yeah, so that was a nice touch. It's interesting too because when you walk into that motor coach, you feel it just feels a little bit different, and it's just slight little improvements. The dash is contoured a little differently, and let's just sit into the driver's seat. And I'll pause there to say one of the things I found really interesting is, as I just generally polled randomly questions of the people milling around this new motor coach and looking at it, it was shocking to me, but probably not that shocking, how many operators were there as owners and managers and everything else who literally don't drive, who don't have CDLs. They're just looking at, this is just it's just another motor coach, and we own some, maybe we'll get another one. And so for those of us that do any driving, maybe I'm a little bit of a hybrid that way, I guess. And there were several others, of course. But for those of us that understand these coaches because we've actually driven them, it was fun to jump in the driver's seat. So let's go there. Now let's sit in the driver's seat, and Bob's going to say, all right, how's it any different? Well, the digital dash, we've been talking about that for a while. Obviously, MCI were they the first coach company that had the digital display a few years ago? I feel like they maybe were first.
I think MCI was first.
Yep. And incidentally, the new Tempsas that will have the digital dash, it's the same digital display as the MCIs, by the way. As a little side note. The Prevost digital dash, it's fully digital, but it looks exactly the same as our current analog. So they've kept all the basic dials looking the same. All the gauges are basically the same. The difference now being it's digital instead of analog. but it looks the same, which I'm totally fine with because I don't
Hmm.
necessarily like a lot of like I have a Dodge Durango that has a digital dash and it has all kinds of different options and they can be kind of distracting, truthfully. So I kind of like the fact they kept it pretty classy. But the big difference is, for any of you who've ever wandered through the menu system on any motor coach, you're going to love this menu system because they've changed the steering wheel. And you look at the picture of the steering wheel, there's all kinds of buttons. What is missing off the steering wheel is shade control. You no longer can raise and lower the shades on the steering wheel.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yep. That was a sacrificial, you know, item, I think, in this all the other stuff they put on the steering wheel.
But there's,
The
I was going to
switch is
say,
easy to get.
there's more on the steering wheel than ever. There's like, isn't there like 9 or 10 buttons?
Oh, there's all kinds of buttons, yeah. And the big thing is the menu navigation, which is a center button, a little center, push it and scroll it. And now all of the items just flow in a real natural, easy to navigate order. You don't have a lot of the sub menus like we used to. I love the fact that there's a regen screen that shows you soot level, that shows you regen needed or not needed. You know, you can request a regen. So it's a very simple, not like the little two black buttons on the back left
Yeah,
of the
right.
current steering wheel where good luck navigating the right order. I've gotten really good at it, but that's cumbersome. So they've kind of eliminated with that. Obviously, you have cruise control, you have radio controls, you have all of that kind of stuff right there, which is great. Um, Two other huge changes from a driver's perspective is to adjust the steering wheel, which now has more control than it had before. You no longer have to reach underneath the dash. There's a foot pedal down on the floor, and you push the foot pedal and then adjust it accordingly. That's a
That's a
big thing.
great change. That's a great change,
Yep.
especially for me. I had a really hard time adapting to that coming from driving J's for 18 years,
Yep.
where it was right on
Yep.
the steering column. Yeah, I like that.
Yep. So that's a nice thing. And the parking brake is no longer on the rail to your left. It is on the dash and it's very simple to operate. It doesn't require that awkward kind of push the center in thing that we have with that triangle yellow deal and all of that. So I think that too was it was an upgrade that I didn't expect to see or need or think that I would care about. As a result, that also then opens up everything on your left side. And of course, the first thing that I noticed was there's no tag axle. Are you look? Hang on here, 1 second. Pause. There you go. I said throw somebody some keys. I'm back. So the tag axle, and I'm like, what happened to the tag axle? Then they explained to me about the auto tag axle. So they have done away with the manual hydraulic tag axle that we are formerly or currently used to. It is now an automatic tag axle that you can still do some additional load and unload the tag, which a lot of coaches have had for a long time. What's interesting about this particular thing and their rationale is that from an engineering standpoint, their belief is that most drivers that would use a tag wouldn't lift it soon enough for it to be fully at a point where it really helped them. And I think there's truth to that. I've been preaching tag axle use for a long time, and I've watched a lot of our drivers that literally they are initiating their turn, they lift the tag, and they're around the turn by the time the thing does anything. So I kind of think they're probably right. Now the coach intuitively does that. So in my test drive, which is hard to do on the showroom floor. So I was glad I was able to be out on the road. I was able to approach some very tight turns intentionally to get a feel for what that felt like because I know what a turn feels like with the tag totally up in our current H's. And I was blown away. I could definitely I haven't felt response like that since I drove a Temsa TS-45 with a turning tag that gave you that strong sensation like wow, we're really carving this thing tight. So it was
How
quite impressive.
how is it activated? It's just from the steering, right?
It just knows. It just knows when you slow down and start turning the wheel. I don't know. It's magic. I tried to fool it to see if it wouldn't, and it just did. Now as a result, you're going to hear a you're going to hear that going down the road a little bit more because it's constantly loading and unloading a little bit
Hmm.
more on its own. But we'll see. Is it going to become problematic? Hope not. I doubt it. It's hard to know, but it's different. So, And even when in my test drive, I can't tell you, I think 3 times I reached down for my tag. It's just like old habits die hard.
Yeah.
But it's nice because it does give you that ability to massage with your tag, load and unload a little bit more. And they cited the example of a steep driveway that you're coming down and you're starting to level off, where you can, with a managing your load and unload, you might be able to raise the rear end a little bit to give yourself the needed clearance. So I think there's some advantages. It'll take a little retraining in our own minds, but that was kind of a big thing. The sight lines, we're still in the driver's seat. Everything is definitely more open. The 2 columns at the front corners of the coach are smaller than they were before. The windshield is curved a little bit more than it was. So everything just opened up, great visibility,
Mm.
less blind spots, I guess, if you will. And it was just a delight. It was a noticeable thing. And going down the road, I was curious because they claimed that it was a quieter coach up front for the driver. Well, frankly, I've always thought the H's are remarkably quiet. Um, I've driven we have some older Van Hoels. Now, these are definitely older Van Hoels in one of our locations that bit by bit we're selling off. I have driven the J's that we had were vintage 2011, 2012. I remember driving one of those to Philadelphia before I knew you, Bob. So otherwise, I could have stopped and said hello. But I drove that, on a youth missions trip, and I remember the wind noise and what that felt like in that coach. Well, I got into this coach, and it was a very windy day that we went out. When I got up onto the freeway going 55, 60 miles an hour in a strong wind, it was like, this is quieter. I don't know what they did, but they insulated something better. And even though there's seemingly more glass and more exposure, it was quieter.
I just made the switch from, as you know, from driving J's to the Prevost a little bit less than 2 years ago, and I thought right off the bat that the Prevost, even though I was driving some older ones for the most part, they were in general quieter than the J's as far as air noise, especially.
Right. Yeah, and so that seems to be a big thing. And while we're on the topic of noise, if there's one thing that pretty much every coach driver has whined about to someone at some point, is when you have to kick all your defrosters on in a coach. The fact that it sounds like we're trying to lift the space shuttle
Yeah.
in most motor coaches. There's just so much fan noise. Well, they have done some re-engineering of the way the defrost system works so that they are, and I didn't get a percentage, or if they told me I forgot it, but they said that it's a significant increase in airflow and significantly quieter fan motors. And so I kicked the defrost on full, and again, it seemed to be maybe half as loud. I mean, it was
Wow.
noticeably not as loud. So, and the airflow did see. Oh, and part of that is they were pointing out some additional venting they've added around in the driver compartment, so the driver has better airflow, cooler, warmer, whichever direction that they need. Pretty big deal. Um, there's on the left side, behind your left shoulder, kind of back in that very end of that back rail, there's a little cut in cubby hole that you could set something with a couple of USB charging ports right there. Kind of a handy little spot. The first thing I thought is, when I'm driving, and I would probably throw my car keys, back in there. They're out of my
Right.
way. I don't want them in my pocket. Boom, they're done. Um, that was a really, really nice thing. The center console is different. They've taken away the top drawer with the 2 worthless cup holders. We now have a big deep cup holder. Everybody's probably seen the pictures by now over on the left. Again, then that left rail is a deep cup holder that can hold a taller coffee cup or a larger drink of some kind. So that, and it's slanted a little bit. It's really, I think they did a nice job with that. But that center drawer now, because that top is gone, there's now a display screen. I believe it's standard on all the H's, and it's, I don't know, 7, 8 inch screen that has navigation, which is kind of handy. Perhaps, if a driver wanted to utilize that.
Tell me about
And
the
that,
navigation. Tell me about the navigation just a little bit. Are you saying you could run the equivalent of a Garmin in that?
I appeared so. I asked the question and they weren't sure, but I think I've confirmed that I was hoping you could maybe somehow Bluetooth Google Maps or Apple Maps or something to that device and have some talking back and forth. And apparently that doesn't happen. But I hit navigation, and a very clear map popped up. I I honestly didn't play with it beyond that anymore, but was assured it's very easy to add addresses and so on into, you know, it, it'd be one less thing to have to mount in a coach if you could utilize that. And
It'd be
if you
nice if it
could
worked
store a
something.
bunch of, yeah,
It'd be nice if it worked something like CarPlay, with CarPlay, or I think Android has an equivalent too. I forget what it's called,
yeah.
but in my personal van, CarPlay works great. I can run Waze or Google Maps or Apple Maps, any of those.
I think that I caught them off by surprise a little on that, wanting to deep dive into those questions. I'm not sure that that group even necessarily knew that. For all we know, it maybe has some of that capability. So I'd say
Right.
the jury's still out on that. It does, however, that screen does house your backup camera. And that was very nice to not have to have that thing, mounted
One
up to
more
your left.
display. Right.
Pops right up there, and it seemed to be very responsive, and then switched to the screen very quickly.
Yeah.
So there's a new they've improved and have replaced the already very robust HVAC system. They claim even better and more precise climate control around the coach, which God bless them. It's already great. I you set it and just kind of drive, but they apparently made it better, and the interface is a little more logical. One of the things they added, which again is one of those aha moments, why didn't anybody think of this before? There's on your interior lighting switches, and all it's the normal thing, the cabin lights part way up, all the way up, reading lights, all of that. There's a switch with a broom on it, and those are your cleaning lights. They have
Oh wow.
added light. They have added lights along the side rails. All those deep dark abysses of the motor coach that drivers and cleaners sometimes have a hard time finding that last French fry, and those things that are down in the dark parts of the cavern part of the floor. And so, it was noticeable, like, okay, now that makes sense. Just better illumination around the coach in general. So that was pretty
That's
neat.
that's an aha moment. Why did no one think of that before? Are there no other coaches that have that?
Exactly. However, you'll be glad to know, or not glad to know, nobody has solved the front trash problem in a motor coach.
That's amazing. That
So
amazes me.
and everybody's, I talked to every manufacturer there, and they all look at you like, yep, we hear that a lot. Well, now I may be circling back with you because I ordered off of Amazon a well, I'll show you later. It hasn't come yet,
Okay.
but
Okay.
kind of a clip-on dispenser that I'm envisioning might be able to hang over that front vanity panel in front of the front seat on the passenger side. That would be easy to just lift off and put aside, and it can't be too cumbersome, but it would sure be nice to have something other than like we all have some plastic, trash receptacle that everybody's bouncing around in the front couple of seats of the coach. But
It gets
no
moved around all
solution
the
there.
time, and nobody can find it when they need it.
Correct. And then you find
Yeah.
there's a motor coach that has three of them in the luggage bays. So
Yeah.
basically, what they basically stated is from the luggage bays up, most everything has been redesigned in this age.
Cool.
The luggage bays down, luggage bays are the same, the doors are the same, all of that's pretty much the same.
Yeah.
Let's talk the last thing inside the coach. They've upgraded seating, but every manufacturer is always upgrading seating. So I think you just have to. It is what it is. They all look great. There wasn't an ugly motor coach on display. I'll tell you that. They all
Yeah.
the creature comforts just are getting better from everybody, including the aftermarket seat manufacturers. So it's been it's been a big difference. But the parcel racks, and we're all familiar with the overhead parcel racks in motor coaches, they've done two remarkable things. The first thing they've done is they replaced the doors are no longer plastic. They're now, I think, an aluminum, very hefty kind of door. And when they shut with authority. I think, I know it seems in our garage we run anywhere from 10 to 12 H's out of this Minneapolis garage up that I manage, and we replace an overhead compartment, parcel rack door probably once every 2 or 3 months. Another plastic one breaks off or somebody does something. So these seem to be very substantial, and I don't think we'll experience those issues. You no longer can carpet the ceiling, or we've always ordered our coaches with the fabric on the ceiling that matches the vanity panels and the sides of the coach. It's now an open, and I'm sure they're doing that to make the coach feel brighter and more, just a little more open. So it's a light colored cream or gray or whatever color. I don't even know what it was. But if you look at the photos, you'll see it's no longer a fabric or carpeted kind of ceiling. However, they've also design the shape of the parcel rack so that you can sit in an aisle seat and now stand straight up. So, Bob, guys like yourself and
Yeah.
me and people that are 6 feet or more, you could literally sit in an aisle seat, stand straight up without having to, lean away from the parcel rack. And yet it has the same amount of storage space. So, I'm not. They magically went more into the side of the coach or something. I'm not really sure.
Oh, that's great. And what about rattles? Did you notice them rattling? I know you didn't drive for all that long of a period of time, and
Well,
probably not ever
funny you
bumpy
say that because
roads.
I
But
was listening for that exact thing, and I couldn't hear a squeak or a rattle in the entire coach. And
wow,
I think those are big part of it because I think they've just fortified that whole system, and I think that's where this is the source of a lot of our jinking and janking and rattling a little bit. I think I'm not
that
an
in the
expert.
windshield blinds
Yep.
on some coaches, big source
Right.
of the
And
noise and rattles.
the windshield blinds now have an overlap. So there's a slight overlap to them now, which can now take care of every once in a while with the current separate blinds. If the sun's in a certain position, it can still blind the driver and a blind doesn't help you.
Right,
Problem solved with that overlap. So again, one of
great.
those, why didn't somebody think of that sooner? But that was a
Yeah,
nice thing. So,
yeah.
what I can tell you is at the end of the first day, because they do the kind of a sneak preview the one night, and there's a little reception in there, and that was the night they did the big unveiling and the big intro. And anybody who's watched that, the 3 minutes of torture as they finally got to the final curtain drop there, that was kind of spread out a little longer than maybe could have, but it
That
built the
was
excitement. So
that was a long wait for that curtain to drop.
yeah, it really was. I don't know where that. Yeah, it really was. But nonetheless, it was still exciting. But I was told later on that security literally had to get people to leave the room because there were that motor coach was filled with vendors from other companies that just were packed into that thing like sardines. So security finally had to come in and say, guys, well, you're gonna really shut this thing down. Go, get out of here, go. So that was kind of funny. But and again, that's where I think that this benefits everyone because everybody looks at these and sure, it's easy to say if I wasn't a driver or a fan of Prevost, I might look at it and go, who needs that?
Yeah,
We already have that. But at the end of the day, I look at it as how does it? What are the feature upgrades for this coach? And I bet we'll see some of them in some other coaches soon. So I think it's good. It's a win-win for all of us. So
I
I
agree.
don't know. I bounced all around, but I think I've hit most of it.
Yeah, I think you covered everything well. Um, do you have any final comments about your actual test drive when you were sitting behind the wheel? Did it feel
It was
significantly
interesting.
different?
Yeah, funny story. So the first thing that happened before I pulled away from the curb was the gentleman, shocking French gentleman from Prevost, was standing down in the aisleway just as I got in. I jumped in the driver's seat and buckled in my seatbelt and got everything all set up, and he was standing down in the steps. And before I released the parking brake, I'm like, uh, join us up in the coach here? He goes, I stay right here. I said, well, how about behind the white line? Kind of jokingly said, I stay right here for demo rides. So, and then I did have a quick funny. I said, well, I said the last person to stand in the aisle while I was driving was also a Frenchman. It was Jean from the Montreal Canadiens years ago, who insisted that he too stood right there. So I said it must be a French thing, and that got a good laugh in the coach. But that
Well,
was a little.
one thing with the electronic mirrors, at least they're not blocking your mirrors, right?
Well, that's exactly right. Except the demo did not have the electronic mirrors, so I still was
Oh,
relying on
okay, okay,
this. The driving demo, I should say.
right,
But
right, right.
no, and it was great because the very first thing I did was I looked at this street, and very quiet in between the convention center and the hotel. And I'm like, can I make a U-turn here? And he kind of smiled and he goes, nobody's tried. I'd like to see. I think we can. And it was quiet enough where I could have made an adjustment with the auto tag. I wanted to try it right out of the gate.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just carved it a touch to the right and then made my turn, made it no problem. They were all like, ooh, that was pretty impressive. So it was, and made my very first move was a U-turn. How about that? Everything about it was great. The turn signal, much louder. It blinks louder, clicks louder. It kind of annoyed me, truthfully. But I guess I could deal with that. Other than that, just we flipped the radio on, wonderful sound system. As always, these coach sound systems have been very, very good for a number of years,
Yeah,
but they've made it
systems.
even better.
Yeah.
So that was good. So no, my all-around impression was, give me the checkbook. Let's order some of these. But we just took delivery, or we just went up to Calgary and Winnipeg and bought 14 late model coaches from somebody up there. And so I kind of think we're probably not going to be buying any brand new H's for a little bit yet, but stay tuned. You know us.
There's a pretty long wait right now anyway, right?
Yeah, they're saying 14 months out is what they're currently saying. But, that's assuming everybody who has one ordered follows through and gets their financing.
Right.
Sometimes magical things tend to happen that way.
Right.
Other than that, the driving experience was terrific with it. It was everything I expected it to be. The kneeler works just as wonderfully as ever. Everything about it was just terrific that way. And again, the coaches on the show floor, we pretty much looked at them all. I would say second to the Prevost, I think the most impressive transformation I saw was in TEMSA. A lot of us have had some not great experiences with TEMSAs in recent years, but talking to a number of operators that have purchased a new TEMSA in the last 2 years or less, they are finding them to be very reliable. They are running great. We spent a lot of time going over all the engineering changes to the coaches. I think they really have. They've addressed the sins of their past, and it was very impressive walking around them. And that's good to see. Again, that's a win for everybody because the mini coach segment is still the black hole of the industry. There haven't been great solutions out there. So I think TEMSA really does have a great opportunity if they can leverage it and move forward and get some goodwill, because there's a lot of bad vibes about TEMSA around the country.
That's good to hear. My biggest problem with TEMSA is that I'm too tall to fit comfortably in the smaller cockpit. I don't know if that's changed.
Which is larger, which they've made it larger. And again, I noticed that quite a bit. They too have widened the entrance a little, and they actually have added one step, because that's one of the concerns people often raised about that smaller TEMSA. The steps are actually quite steep for a 30 passenger, and they've added a step, so that's much better. And so, yeah, you might have to if you get a chance to see one of those, jump in. I know that Eagle runs some, and I talked to Rachel Greenwell was down there, and she was quite high on their TS30s that they've been running around in. So, and it was fun to see, of course, Sean and James Wang and some of those social media people that were buzzing around. And Bob, it would have been great to get you there, so we'll have to try and get you a press pass next year.
Yeah, I would have loved to have been there.
So, we'll work on that.
All right, that sounds good. Barry, thank you very much for joining me today, and I look forward to talking to you again in the near future. That's a great overview, and I'm more excited than ever to see some of the 2024 Prevost and some of the other new coaches on the road. Thanks again.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. All right, we'll be in touch. I got to go work.
Yeah, me too. All right, thanks, Barry.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks for watching. I hope you found this interesting and helpful. We'd welcome your comments below. Also, below is a link to the 8 Wheels Across America Facebook forum. If you're a Motorcoach operator, we'd love to have you join us. We have a great group of over 300 drivers sharing information and discussing issues related to driving motorcoaches every day. There's also a link to the website for the audio-only podcasts of 8 Wheels Across America. If you haven't heard those before, take a listen and catch up. And most importantly, please like and subscribe to this channel so you're notified of new videos as soon as they're posted. See you next time. See ya.